Okay, so by the way of Etienne Louis Boullee, who died on this day, but a few centuries ago, I thought like an introduction to quickly review a little bit also the work of Ledoux. Maybe you know that Louis Kahn, he was invited at one moment to write a foreword to a book or an exhibition or the catalog for the exhibition with the works of Ledoux and Boullee. And he wrote a short poem. And it is probably the only little poem I memorized. So allow me to recite it to you, for you. It goes like this. Spirit in will to express can make the great sun seem small. The sun is, thus the universe. Did we need Bach? Bach is, thus music is. Did we need Ledoux? Did we need Boullee? Ledoux is, Boullee is, thus architecture is. O frumoasă introducere a lui Louis Kahn mă rog, în acel catalog al expoziției cu lucrările lui Ledoux și Boullee. În primul rând, câteva cuvinte despre Claude Nicolas Ledoux. El nu s-a născut azi. Oh, sorry, now I'm talking in Romanian. Maybe I should start again. I start again. No, I will continue like this. It was an imperfect beginning, so what can I do? So, Claude Nicolas Ledoux. This was the man, elegant. I couldn't find pictures with Boullee, unfortunately, but maybe I didn't search hard enough. They were both very well known during their time, but they didn't build so much. They are mostly significant because of their graphic works, their projects. Although Ledoux built and a few buildings by him are still standing. At La Villette, you know, in Paris, here it is. This is Claude Nicolas Ledoux. You know, it is unfortunate that just a hotel by Boullee is still standing. But Ledoux apparently was quite capable of building buildings that were not dwarfed by time. So this is an interesting project. Barrière du Trône is a social housing and public administration building that was completed in 1787. The project is located in Paris, you know, it's a massive architecture. They are considered neoclassical architects, but their neoclassicism is of a very special nature. You'll understand why. Anyway, another building by Claude Nicolas Ledoux in Paris. Yeah, centralized plans, you know, solidity, monolithic architectures. This is a very interesting work. This was the plan. They are considered visionary architects. Now, the word visionary sometimes is used either when there isn't a very fine understanding, and then we call visionary someone we don't understand, or sometimes megalomania is associated with what is called visionary work. Maybe there is a combination, but there is also idealism and this quest for a certain otherness. And this quest for a certain otherness manifests itself in various ways. So again, this is not Boullee, this is Ledoux. I just wanted to show a little bit, to go obliquely towards Boullee by presenting first a few works by Ledoux. I understand why Louis Kahn admired them, because Louis Kahn was also animated by idealism and you know, a quest for the so-called immeasurable or the absolute. Ledoux had such projects that are, bordering on the fantastic, on surrealism. And it was even built, this one, recently, not by him, of course. This kind of formal architecture, but it's more than formalism. It is a quest for the archaic, for the primordial, for a certain archetype almost. And this was, an image that I think he produced representing vision. Now, for Etienne Louis Boullee, I will go to another presentation, which is more ample than this one, which I prepared for today. And yes, Etienne Louis Boullee died on this day in 1799. So let me see if I can count, 222 years ago, I think, yes. Okay, slideshow. Boullee, of the two, of Ledoux and himself, Boullee is even more radical and fantastic. You'll understand. But this was also perhaps a cause for him not building much, and but he made up for not building much in his projects. I read these words about him: an emotionally committed neoclassicism. Interesting conjunction here, because neoclassicism is not really known as a very emotional current in or style in architecture. Quite the opposite. Neoclassicism is rather subdued, if not to use another word. But he did bring emotion. I think that emotion is not a typical romantic gesture, but it is the result of assuming certain dimensions of existence of an almost cosmic amplitude and character. So he was born on the 12th of February. We'll talk again about him just 8 days from now. But he died, as I said, on the 4th of February, 1799. Was a visionary French neoclassical architect whose work greatly influenced contemporary architects. It is true, he has a power of seduction undiminished. Boullee's fondness for grandiose designs has caused him to be characterized as both a megalomaniac and a visionary. His focus on polarity, offsetting opposite design elements, and the use of light and shadow was highly innovative and continues to influence architects to this day. He was so-called rediscovered in the 20th century and has influenced recent architects such as Aldo Rossi. Well, this text was written when Aldo Rossi probably was alive. As you know, probably Aldo Rossi died in a car accident. I don't know exactly when, 25 years ago, I think in the 90s, at the end of the 20th century. Now, the only clearly, the only building I found that is identified with as being authored by Boullee is this, not this one, sorry. This one I couldn't even find pictures of, is this one. The Hotel Alexandre, also known as Hotel Sous, is a hotel particulier in the 8th arrondissement of Paris, in France, designed by French architect Boullee. The building was constructed from 1763 to 1766 and is the best surviving structure designed by Boullee. It's actually the only one I found. It was very unclear, the information about this. This is a drawing that he made. And it's interesting to compare this building that was built with the buildings he didn't build. And his personality was shown through and through, particularly in the projects that were not realized, and maybe some of them were not even contemplated to ever be realized. Although we should never say never, right? So this is a building, indeed, this is classic, neoclassical, and I wouldn't even say if it is so very emotional. Maybe it is a little bit, it has a certain level of sensitivity, but that description is particularly associated with his unrealized projects. Yeah, we see this, rather bucolic vision of a building built for the social and political elite. Nothing really new about this. I don't know. There is the headquarters of a company now is located in this building. Now we see a photograph of the same building by an important photographer, Eugène Aché, from 1909. So after, more than a century after Boullee died. A very good photographer that I suggest if you want to recall his name. Now we arrive at maybe his most famous project for a cenotaph for Sir Isaac Newton, that very Newton who, irritated Goethe, the poet, who also had scientific ambitions. Newton was without doubt one of the most famous scientists of all time. And Goethe reproached him that in his theory of colors, he said, Isaac, you make the same mistake dividing light that the church makes dividing God in 3 or 4. You cannot divide light and you cannot divide God. And it was Goethe who discovered the complementary interaction between colors, opposite colors. It was the poet who discovered that if you look at an intense red spot and then you move your eyes towards a white wall, you will see green instead of red. And that is almost miraculous. But we have our cameras today and so on, thanks to Newton, not thanks to the poet. But the poet observed and underlined the wholeness of life. This is maybe not the typical role of the scientist. The scientist analyzes, but the poet brings together, unites. The poet attempts the synthesis. The scientist attempts the analysis. Now, some scientists like Einstein, and I don't know at all a lot about science, but I understood some scientists, the most ambitious, also quest for a theory of, a unifying theory. But this is a rather unique attempt. Anyway, so Boullee promoted the idea of making architecture expressive of its purpose, a doctrine that his detractors termed architecture parlante, talking architecture, which was an essential element in Beaux-Arts architectural training in the later 19th century. Well, this is a little bit strange because we are talking here about a century earlier. Anyway, his style was most notably exemplified in his proposal for a cenotaph, a funerary monument celebrating a figure interred elsewhere for the English scientist Isaac Newton, who 50 years after his death became a symbol of the Enlightenment or Enlightenment ideas. The building itself was a 150 meters tall sphere, taller than the Great Pyramids of Giza, encompassed by 2 large barriers circled by hundreds of cypress trees. Now, the cypress tree is a tree usually associated with death. And indeed, it was supposed to be a cenotaph, a funerary monument. The massive and spheric shape of the building was inspired by Boullee's own study called Theory of Bodies, where he claims that the most beautiful and perfect natural body is the sphere, which is the most proeminent element of the Newton memorial. Though the structure was never built, Boullee had many ink and wash drawings engraved and circulated wildly in the professional circles in 1784. The small sarcophagus for Newton is placed at the lower pole of the sphere. The design of the memorial is intended to create the effect of day and night. The night effect occurs when the sarcophagus is illuminated by the sunlight coming through the holes in the vaulting, giving the illusion of stars in the night sky. Interesting idea. So during the day, he wanted to create the feeling of night. The day effect is an armillary sphere hanging in the center that gives off a mysterious glow. Thus, the use of light in the building's design causes the building's interior to change its appearance. You have seen images. These are very famous images. Please notice the scale, I mean, the size of the human beings in front of the monument. I mean, it is, maybe even for God, such a monument would not have been envisioned. But this was destined to commemorate a man, a human being, Isaac Newton. And you see the cypress trees, you know, it seems that for Boullee, Newton meant a lot, just as Einstein meant a lot for Lebesgue. These drawings, these renderings are very modern and very powerful and very, I don't know, the fundamentalism is striking. And I think because of such projects, he is called a visionary architect. Now, what is a visionary architect? Well, he's an architect who has visions, who sees what the others do not see, or foresees what the others do not see or foresee. The visionary is the one who, you know, sees beyond the limits, the common limits. But sometimes, again, we use this word in order to name someone who is, you know, a little bit removed, so to speak, from our day-to-day concerns. It is a striking, I mean, just imagine it was built, and actually a smaller building, cultural center in a city in Mexico was built, and you are going to see it. But there is something else to mention here, is the creative concern with death. And I think there is a problem with present time, with our time. We devalue death terribly. I mean, maybe because in part because of the devaluation, you know, the pushing of death into the corner of irrelevance through the unbelievable amount of you know, mimicked death on our screens. The TV, you turn on the TV, what do you see? Death, death, and death again. Shootings and all kinds of crimes, because the TV, instead of being used as a cultural tool, it is used for sensationalism in order to increase some people's money. And it became a corrupted tool. And people are exploited through this tool, through the pleasure principle. Strangely, people sitting comfortably on their sofas love to watch horrors, you know, horror movies, crimes, rapes, you know, the most abhorrent things people like to watch. And I think a legitimate question is why? Why do we like violence? It is obvious we like violence because that's what the TV offers us. If we liked Arthur Schopenhauer or Isaac Newton or Goethe, TV would have offered us that. But no, we love violence, killings, death, death and death and death. But the more death on our screens, the more sensitive we are towards the implacable ending of life. So it is my understanding or my perception or my, I don't know, my feeling that death in our times became trivialized beyond measure. It is so trivialized that it was reduced to fiction, but it is not a fiction. That's why we don't, I mean, you know, what is our reverence for the past or for there isn't really, there isn't, we don't have it any longer. that deep attachment to what preceded us, and that reverence, that modesty vis-a-vis the cosmic force of what death means. So you know, I actually think Hollywood is a cancer. It is a cancer, Hollywood. Hollywood infected the whole world with its manipulation, because we are manipulated through Hollywood, through the pleasure principle, to caress a cat to death. You just lay on the sofa and watch some nonsense, so-called created in Hollywood, which has only one purpose: to fill the pockets of some people with more money. You saw very well that any review of a film made in Hollywood begins with the phrase, "It earned this amount of money at the box office." It is not art what they produce at Hollywood. It is commerce. It's raison d'être is making money. Now, forgive me for this oblique, short journey into this field. But when I see what Boullee envisioned, and when I reflect on how trivialized death is today, although we are confronted with terrible tragedies, I had the feeling that I had to say a few more things. And I almost feel actually, and yes, I'm subjective, I'm not a god, I make mistakes very often, and maybe my intuitions are wrong. But I have a feeling that somehow, in as much as life ends in death, death through memory, and in a way, these very presentations are just about that. Life, maybe the verb to nourish is not appropriate in this case. Life nourishes death, and death nourishes life through memory, through what it gives you from the past or from the world beyond, through memory, through knowledge, or an art, or anything that was created at some other time. I imagine this is what animated the Boullee as well. He created this original work, even though it remained on paper, but it is very potent and powerful, uh, as a commemoration of Newton, as an act of love, actually, towards something that was and is and could and will be. Um, and you see, he transcended the little biographical elements. This is a vision, a cosmic vision almost, that speaks about day and night, life and death. And so it transcends the specificities of a single biography. Yes, it is monumental. Yes, it is huge. Yes, maybe it is megalomaniacal, but it is about the mystery of life. It's about time. And time is not whatever the North Americans say, that time is money. That is not only it's a terrible misunderstanding, it is such a vulgar thought, if we can call it a thought. How could you reduce time to money? Time is immeasurable and is a cosmic force, and money is measurable. And so, how could you equate immeasurableness with measurableness? But this shows how banal, how cheap, how small our age is. You reduce time to the pocket. Time is money. This is what is being said in that country. Is terrible, and the whole world follows on that path. In the name of efficiency and productivity and counting the money, because we became just merchants, nothing else. It's very sad. Anyway, back to these very powerful and inspired drawings. No doubt, he had a vision here. And I would say that it was the Newton was rather a pretext for his meditation on life and death and the cosmic force of time. Now, by the way of this project by Boullee, I show this, I discovered it today actually, Centro Cultural Tijuana, in a troubled town actually in Mexico, but they built something obviously inspired by Boullee. Look at this. It's a cultural center. It doesn't have the cosmic connotations that the project by Boullee has, but still, they built it. And, it's a town, it's a city, in Mexico with all its, with a modern paraphernalia. But this sphere, I mean, look, during construction, I like this picture. The absolute of the sphere is not hiding the complexity and the drama in a way of its being built. Anyway, this is not truly the cenotaph for Newton, but I think the architects had studied a little bit the project by Boullee. Now, not every sphere refers to Boullee, but in this case, I think it does a little bit. And you look at it, and then you look at the sign of McDonald's. It's what can we do? It's the same thing. It's the same procedure that Hollywood uses. To seduce us into frivolousness and nothingness, actually, because you can't really say that you eat at McDonald's, just in as much as you don't eat culture through Hollywood. No, they are both simulacrums and simulations. Alternative food, for thought and feeling at Hollywood, and for the stomach with McDonald's. They're just mimicking. They are not the real thing. Anyway, but this building, I think, has a certain level. And the surprising thing is that it is in Tijuana, which is right at the border with the United States. And there are, it's a destitute town, actually, with many problems. But look at this, surprise, surprise. They build this almost an homage to Boullee here. Anyway, let's not get carried away by emotionalism here, but I think it's worth knowing that troubled town in Mexico built something like this. I particularly like this picture. Now, we arrive at another project by Boullee. He did 2 projects for La Bibliothèque du Roi, the Library of the King, in 1785. And this also inspired works in the present. And you are going to see one of them, and you probably know it, by MVRDV library they built in China. The project by Boullee is vast. I mean, it is indeed a library for the king, nothing else or nothing less. From 1785, Bibliothèque Nationale, the National Library, and this image is very well known. I mean, this is a building that is meant to, again, to represent the absolute of an idea, in as much as the cenotaph or Newton tried to do. Here as well, it's the temple of books, the one and only, if it was built. And you see these silhouettes, these human beings here, kind of inspired by the Platonic Academy or the Plato's Academy as depicted by Raphael, where people who dedicated or would dedicate their lives to knowledge, to learning, are there to debate ideas, something we don't do. And I don't know why, because we can now. Zoom is offering us a chance to debate, and very rarely we do. And I think we could do more. I do believe that this pandemic and the other crises we are confronted with are some kind of an invitation for us to change our ways, and to maybe dedicate more time to culture, to ideas, to exchange thoughts, feelings. There is a chance we have now. Anyway, the longitudinal sections through this, tremendous space. I found a site, a French site, with all kinds of academic details about this project. For example, I didn't quite understand. There was supposed to be here this atlas here, and apparently there is some kind of a sphere here in various places. You see here, maybe here too, here and here. I don't know. I had no time to analyze, and I'm usually not a very good analyst. But if you are interested in the subject, you can find interesting information about this project. And you see, even a project, it remained a project, but it's still stirring up our curiosity. Why? Because it is a thought there. A thought, and that thought could be manifest into a built building or an unbuilt building. So, Boullee's unbuilt place de la Bibliothèque Nationale, Bibliothèque du Roi à la Rue, apparently it was designed for a specific place within Paris. Here it's, a colonnade, a temple-like facade. This one, he had two versions. One keeping, I think, an existing wall there, if I understood well, and this one where he had this, monumental colonnade. The dimensions are not of the building, but of the drawing. Anyway, the inspiration that came from Raphael, we see here Michelangelo, a little bit maybe disappointed, disheartened by human society and human life. Here is Plato, and on the right, Aristotle, but I don't know if, yes, we see them here, the two philosophers of the Platonic school, coming together. And anyway, it's an idealized version of, Plato's Academy. And there is a correspondence. This is the drawing, the project of Boullee, and this is the painting, the fresco of Raphael. And the dream of a perfect academy existed and exists and will continue to exist. It's really up to us if we realize it or not. And also, I think the question is, what do we mean by knowledge? What is knowledge? What is education? I did I searched myself, and I found that education, the word comes from educere in Latin, which means to lead forth or to bring forth. It is open-ended. It's a love of knowledge for the sake of knowledge, not for the sake of making more money or for, I don't know, some little lucrative purpose. No, the purpose is knowledge, to know, and nothing else. It has to do with curiosity, intellectual curiosity. And that kind of knowledge is discouraged today by all schools. Schools today are vocational schools. They prepare people to become, after graduation, slaves in the social army, not to increase their knowledge, their understanding, not to become aware. I think it's a terrible loss. The idealism of knowledge, of knowledge on one hand and of education on the other is lost, is completely lost. You enter into a college in order to get a diploma, in order to quickly jump into the social army and sell yourself in order to so-called earn a living. But most of us, continuously, we so-called earn a living by betraying living. The great task, the difficult task is to earn one's life, not a living. Yes, I'm not saying it's easy to earn a living. I know myself how difficult it is to make money, to pay a rent, to buy food and so on. But this should not be the purpose of life. And so we transformed earning one's life into earning a living. But by earning a living, often we don't earn our lives. And that's why there is so much unhappiness. You go to work from 9 to 5, And yes, you get a salary which you spend rather quickly, but you are not happy. And you are not happy because you don't listen to your heart, to your mind, to your, primordial questions. Who am I? Why am I here? What am I doing on this earth? I think this obsession with a goal that the education has is very detrimental, because that genuine curiosity that one has towards reading a book. I mean, look at these people. They are just, here you could say in one way that they are parasites. I mean, I don't know how they eat. I don't know how they earn a living, but I see them here in a quest for knowledge, for the sake of knowledge, not for the sake of increasing their salary. Uh, um, anyway, so this is the correspondence between the Plato's Academy by Raphael and this drawing by Boullee. And I do believe, and I keep saying it, that Stephen Hall was right when he said, remain idealistic. The soul needs the ideal more than the real. Unfortunately, I'm not so sure that he does it himself, because I invited him when I made a presentation on him in December. He sent me an exalted little message, but not directly, through his executive assistant, that I brought him joy on his birthday, and he's happy that in Bucharest, we thought of him, and he mentioned Zarathustra and the ideal and so on, and joy. And then I invited him to be the judge for a competition I wanted to launch, because last year there were 250 years since the birth of Ludwig van Beethoven. And I said, I wrote a text, The House of Joy. And I invited him because he mentioned joy, and I think it would have been a great competition and would have attracted many people because of his name there, and also the theme, the House of Joy, relating to the Ode of Joy by Beethoven. And he has said he was considering to do that, but then his assistant asked me what would be the honorarium, meaning the pay. And I got very disheartened, because first of all, he doesn't need our money or my money, which I do not have. He doesn't. He is doing well by himself. But, to be invited to pay homage to Beethoven and to joy, and to ask what the honorarium will be, to me is something very, very disappointing. I didn't write him yet about this, but one day I will, because, it's easy to say remain idealistic, and on the other hand, to throw that idealism into the gutter, because essentially this is what he did. Anyway, we move forward. So some other details of the project. There is a site on the web that analyzes in a very thorough way, this project. But I'm not good at facts, at accumulating facts. In fact, I always say I don't transmit information. I try to transmit inspiration. If I succeed in doing that, I feel my task is served. If you want information, a lot of information, you can find on the web now. You can find anything, as you know. This is a section through, it looks kind of strange. It looks small now because of the hugeness of the Charpente, and I don't know. It's something strange. You think this is a small house, but it's actually a cross section through that immense library. Now we go to a building that was built recently by MVRDV, and I'm sure MVRDV had a look at the works by Boullee, not just the library, but also the cenotaph by Newton. And again, the sphere, and the vastness of the library, with books even on the ceiling. I mean, this is the craziness of our time. We can build anything. China can build anything, and we would even build a building where there are books where we could never arrive at. And to me, there is something, I mean, yes, I admire certain qualities of the project, but I also feel there is a level of rhetorics here that is a little bit dangerous, because it becomes almost like an entertainment space. You know, I wonder if anyone reads a book here. You know, you just wander through the space, but it shows the vacuity actually of knowledge. Yeah, I see some people, you know, looking a little bit through some books, but it's intimidating. I mean, what are the books doing here? You know, yeah, in a way, the book wants to come back into the world, because with Gutenberg, Victor Hugo was right when he said the book killed the cathedral, because until the arrival of Gutenberg and printing, you know, mass printing, the knowledge was expressed through the walls of the cathedral, the biblical knowledge, the story was there in the walls. There were very, very few books. But with the event of mass-produced books, little by little, the knowledge expressed in the walls of the cathedral became irrelevant. So Victor Hugo was right. The book killed the cathedral. And now the internet is killing the book. I mean, yes, we are still fascinated by books. I love books too, but the truth is, you know, they are strongly challenged by the digital realities and the virtual realities. Books, it's almost the sunset effect. The sun is at its most splendid when it sets. In other words, when it is on the verge of disappearing beyond the horizon. It's the same with the books. They are splendid, but somehow useless, futile. I mean, look at them here. You know, they are unreachable. Why are they there? Why? Just for show? You know, it's like a library in someone's house who never opens the books. You know, it's just you know, to show off. Anyway, but you see the references, the historical references. There is a relation, I'm convinced, between Boullee and what MVRDV did. It's not a bad building. No, it's not. But there is a but. There is a but, I think. Anyway, it's a vast subject. I will not address it, and I wouldn't be able to address it acceptably now. But I invite to reflection, and maybe we'll talk one day about what it means today, a book, and what is a library, and what is knowledge, and what is education. What are they actually, in actuality? I almost have a longing for not knowing anything and for being ignorant, because closer to my true nature in a way, instead of being, you know, affected by what we call knowledge. But am I wiser? No, I'm not. And Socrates was right when he said at the end of his life, I only know one thing, that I don't know anything. But he knew a lot in order to arrive at that knowledge. Now, I'll show a few other drawings and projects by Boullee, since he died 122 years ago, I think. No, 222 years ago. Anyway, they're all, I mean, you know, maybe he had a time at his disposal. You know, this is another cenotaph. I forgot its name. He was obsessed by time, but also by death. And in a way, what I try to do is not very dissimilar through these almost crazed presentations every day. It's an attempt to resist death in a way, because what else is here is I try to commemorate. Now, in other words, I try to have the past still live. This is what a commemoration is, or an homage. You refuse to let go. And he did the same, but through graphic means, through projects and so on. I do that too, because since 2002, I launched competitions, a house for most of them, 99%, with a commemorative character, a house for Albrecht Dürer, a house for Andrei Tarkovsky, a house for Beethoven, a house for Emil Cioran, a house for Schopenhauer, and so on. Because I do believe that the so-called past can and should be present in the present and in what will follow. So it is, we are all situated on the spiral of time. We are not, fractured from what followed, will follow, and from what preceded us. Okay, so other giant, truly giant projects, but they were, they were not drawn in order to serve the megalomania of a corporation. Let's use the language of today. The man was thinking in cosmic terms, and although there is something, of course, of his time here, it's not. You cannot free yourself completely from the social, political realities of your time. But there is an amplification here. I mean, look at the silhouettes. It's almost something against man, against the human being. That the work of man became so immense, but something of this nature is happening now. Now, what is a big metropolis? The work of man became dwarfing for the very creator, meaning the human being. But again, in the case of Boullee, should not be forgotten. I mean, look at the light here. I mean, there is mysticism here. There is, I think it's some kind of a quest for the infinite. He was a poet, essentially, Boullee. Maybe he could be accused a little bit of some kind of, megalomania, but I don't know. It's a quest for the infinite, for the absolute, for something to transcend the measurable and the finitude of human life. Etienne Louis Boullee. There are books, A Theoretician of Revolutionary Architecture. And there are all kinds of materials about him. He's very, very, I would say, very relevant to our time as well. Some plans, Of course, he didn't think of small matters. This is all about vision, right? And the vision absolves us from the little concerns. Centrality, but this is a centrality not celebrating the human power, but the celestial, the above, the beyond.
Then, what are those trees? I see pine trees like trees
No,
in all the
cypresses.
cypress. Okay.
Yeah, they are the trees associated with funerary monuments and with death.
Okay.
An interesting tree, and it was the symbolism was always associated with the death of this particular tree. Um, anyway, this is a book published by Electa about him. But if we contemplate his work, we can conclude that if you have something to say in architecture, even if you don't have a job, even if you are poor, you can still dream, you can still draw, you can do something. In other words, you can earn your life, even if you don't earn a living. And you can leave behind you a body of work just as he did. He was neglected after his death. He was rediscovered in the 20th century. But you see, this is the power of spirit. And this is what Louis Kahn alluded to. Spirit in will to express can make the great sun seem small. Now, Kahn was not very modest either when he said this, to say that the spirit is, but he was referring to desire, to have a desire for embracing the infinite of existence, a desire for the absolute, and desire is immeasurable indeed. So Boullee was full of desire, sometimes in more inspired forms, other times in less inspired forms, like here. if I'm allowed to be a little malicious. But all in all, his drawings do not leave you indifferent. This was a project for an opera house from 1781. Look at the plan. My God, my God. I mean, this is the opera of operas. No building, no opera ever built would compete with his vision of, I mean, look, all this, it's like the opera is the summum of life. You know, it's nothing could be greater than a great opera. Uh, I don't know very well why this fascination with the opera, but I mean, you see, in China they build a lot of operas. You know, I mean, you know, who goes to the opera? The opera is for the bourgeoisie, no, not for proletarians. The proletarians don't go to the opera. The ticket is very expensive. The production is very expensive, and you know, so this is kind of strange. Even a country that still claims that it's kind of communistic, or the democratic societies of the present, where the bourgeoisie kind of disappeared, still has a longing for the opera. Operas and operas and operas, because I think the human being is the vanity of the human being needs to be nourished. I went to the opera. I will go to the opera. I climbed the stairs. On the left, there is a lion sculpted. On the right, a lion sculpted. I climbed the stair. I'm dressed very, very well. My wife as well. We are dressed with our best clothes. So we go to the opera. Well, you know, I don't know. I mean, it's really questionable. I think there are modern productions of operas that are very interesting. You know, they could take place in, I don't know, even in a market, or in on the streets, or in a way an anti-opera. But the classical opera is a huge, a mega spectacle, a mega show where people dress very well, attend in rapture. Anyway, operas, and more operas. Uh, Spheres again, centrality, diagonals at 45 degrees, diameters. You know, in a way, it's a mad architecture. But on the other hand, is I think if almost any of these so-called visions were built, they would have been, you know, fantastic. They would have been impossible to neglect, to, you know, to avoid. Plan for a museum, the same kind, perfectly centralized, and with strong diagonals. Anyway, and the tower. Look at this. You would say it has, and you understand now why the reference to Aldo Rossi, because Aldo Rossi, in a smaller versions, he used something like this as well in a few projects by him. You also see a possible connection with Giorgio de Chirico and his surrealist metaphysical paintings. All in all, Boullee, and we'll talk again about him because his birthday will come soon. So this is just an introduction to him, by the way of the fact that he died on February 4th. Okay, and now I go to the third. Now the second. My God, today I have to make 5 presentations, and nobody asked me to do this. I must be mad because I'm complicating my own task. So the next one will be Pete Kramer. But in order to understand Pete Kramer, just as I did with Boullee, I will make a short presentation on the School of Amsterdam, because he was an important member of this important architectural movement. A little bit less known, but I would say it deserves to be known. So the School of Amsterdam represents an alternative to Der Stil. It is an architectural movement that didn't neglect the past, the tradition, and I think they arrived at some remarkable results. The most important of the member of the School of Amsterdam was perhaps Michiel de Klerk. Unfortunately, he died young, at 40, I think, or 39. but he drew incredibly well, and he also built a few incredible buildings. And you are going to see his works. And he worked together with Pete Kramer, who also died on February 4th. Um, so this is Michel de Klerk, and we'll celebrate him when his birthday will come, or the day when he died. This is just a short introduction in the works of the School of Amsterdam. This is a building built by him, and it's not bad at all. I have to say that at one point it was there was an interesting man who participated at the Zoom meetings, our Zoom meetings, the former vice mayor of Hague in the Netherlands, and he told us, I remember, that now is a museum here. If I maybe even a museum dedicated to architecture. I'm not sure, but I think it is. I'm talking about this part. This building is a housing complex, and he worked. This is also by him. Can you imagine? I mean, this kind of architecture is not to be neglected. It's interesting, and is this one as well. And these are almost social housings. These are not for the rich. These are for regular people. Maybe even underprivileged people. But look at the brickwork. Work is astonishing, and Pete Kramer worked on some of these buildings. We'll see his work more in detail as we go through this presentation, which I'm beginning a little bit to regret that I amplified it so much. But this is because of my quest for wholeness, in a way. Some projects by him, he drew very, very well, really, and he won competitions, or was supposed to win, and too bad he died young. But he was, as you can see, a very skillful architect. And look at these brickworks. There are all kinds of almost delicious details here. Anyway, I talked about him some months ago again, and I will again. I like these, windows of various sizes, and the brickwork is exquisite, and it's the pleasure of doing architecture. This is what it is. It's the pleasure of doing architecture and bringing arts and crafts at their best, serving the building. There is a mask here, there is a mystery. You could say, wait a minute, is it necessary? Well, it's almost like asking, is beauty necessary? Of course it is necessary. It has a function. Beauty has a function. And I like to think that a bigger function than the refrigerator. This is my challenge to our time. But look at this, why did he complicate himself with this? Well, it's like asking, why did you fall in love? Well, it's love. What can you do? Love is irrational. It's not rational. You cannot explain it rationally. It's love. It's love. It's love for creating architecture, for having movement and beauty and visual interest. That's what it is. Love. What else can we say? Why did he complicate himself here? For the same reason, because he wanted to express, as Louis Kahn said, spirit in will to express can make the great sun seem small. And I don't know if Kahn was entirely true, but there is some uplifting force in what he said. Look at these windows, and again, these are not expensive buildings for the elite. No. These are for working class people, for maybe, as I said, underprivileged people, just like this apartment building. There are very interesting things here. And anyway, this evening is not dedicated to the School of Amsterdam. I just wanted to show where Pete Kramer belongs. This is built by, not by Pete Kramer, but by Michel de Klerk. Another interesting housing complex, no doubt, unique actually, and although you see the connection with the so-called past, This is not an architecture that breaks new ground, radically. It's not. Look at this cultural, intervention with bricks. Pete Kramer and Michael de Klerk. So they both worked on this project, and it's a very fine housing complex. I love this building. I didn't, it was done by him, Pete Kramer, and Michael de Klerk, or Michael de Klerk and Pete Kramer. Uh, it makes me laugh. It makes me happy because I see human imagination. I see the artists in them, who wanted to express again. And it's just a so-called banal block of flats. I'm thinking now of Bonjour Tristesse of Alvaro Siza in Berlin, which is also in the corner, very different from this building, but animated also by a, discreet, more reticent sense of desire, I would say. This one is, I think, is remarkable. And what can we say? I think we need badly to save ourselves through imagination, through imagination, through culture. This is a park where Pete Kramer contributed. Someone, a private individual, bought this plot of land and invited young Dutch architects to build. And Pete Kramer built a few things here. Just show a few buildings. I don't mention who made them because I do not know, but we'll talk more about this in the presentation, specifically about Pete Kramer. Interesting. I mean, we almost see here a certain connection with Ledoux, no? With Claude Nicolas Ledoux. There is the centrality, almost the circle is not quite a circle, the totemic appearance. Here is something else. Also, here is something else. But it's amazing the variety of proposals. And, these were very young architects, who some of them didn't even arrive at being more than, just the young authors of these buildings in this park. The Dutch, they continuously experiment. They are very open-minded and they are not dwarfed by dogmas. And I love this about them. Here is an incredible little building. I hope I have other pictures with it. I don't know exactly what it is. It's like a shed, but it's a masterpiece. Look at it. It's a masterpiece. It's a small work, but it's magnificent. And look what's going on here. You understand how the roofing is supported, and it's such a gentle and almost humorous touch here. And the brickwork is magnificent, and the sculptural element, and yes, it's beauty. It's joy. It's the joy of creativity. Now we go to in more detail to Pete Kramer because he died today. So let's pay homage to him, Pete Kramer. Slideshow from the beginning. Okay, Pete Kramer. He is the second architect today that we commemorate. Born in 1881, died in 1961. What can we say? He was born not far in time from Le Corbusier, but he chose a very different road in his architecture. From 1913 to 1916, he did this building, which I think is glorious. I'm very sorry, Mr. Le Corbusier. I love you, I admire you, I respect you, but I also respect this kind of architecture, which is so rich and complex, and was really the white wall of Villa Savoie, a progress. I don't know. I'm not so sure. Maybe it's my I don't know, my nostalgic side. I don't know, but this is a rich building. It's a rich facade. You'll also see images from the inside. It's incredible. Why can't we bring back sculptures to our buildings? Why not? That are they subtracting something from the building? I don't think so. I think they add something to the building. And there are so many artists who would love to collaborate with the architects, and we don't invite them. So they die in obscurity and maybe hunger, totally unrealized, unable to express their talent. And it's so very sad because even Walter Gropius and others correctly felt and thought that painting and sculpture and architecture should be together. But look what Pete Kramer did. I have other pictures. I hope here, if I remember well, with other pictures of the interior is magnificent. Even the what we see here. I mean, this is not a building that one would pass by without looking at it several times. Even at the top, it is a building that says, "Yes, I am architecture." And bravo to him. Look at the interior. Now you tell me, is this architecture or not? I think it is architecture. It's not a cathedral, but it's cathedral-like. This is what you get when you allow human beings to express their imagination, their longing, and their talent. This is what they do. And what else can I say? It's just an apartment building, I think, or an office building. I think an apartment building, but just imagine having such a lobby in your apartment building. It's, you feel like a king, although you're not. Anyway, this is the man. Sorry for the resolution. I hope I have other pictures. But all in all, this is not a building to ignore. I have no doubts about this. An entrance into the building is an entrance into the building. It's an entrance for a dignified human being who doesn't have to be arrogant, but who is acknowledged as being a human being and not just a number, with an ID. Yeah. Another building, this one you saw with Michel de Klerk, in a different light. I love this building. I always did. I remember when I was younger, I bought from a second-hand store a book on Dutch architecture, and I love this building. Because you cannot separate a building from its culturalness, from its cultural qualities. There must be something. It adds something to the building. And here they create a building. If this was not there, it would have been a straight building and what, but like this, it has individuality. It has presence. It refuses to be, irrelevant and anonymous. But they designed several buildings. There may be a whole street. It's a complex of buildings. It's a whole complex, and they work together. Pete Kramer and Michel de Klerk. Bravo to both of them. Too sad Michel de Klerk died young. For an architect, extremely young, 39 or 40. But he left something. You see, if you pour your heart into your work, it doesn't matter. There are drawings, there are projects, they are not built. But if you put everything that is in you, that energy, that desire, that exuberance, that longing, something happens, I think. Those drawings would not die. In some way, somehow they will be acknowledged. Sooner or later. Now, I don't know what is here, but it's okay. Look at the windows, little inventions. This is not the main entrance probably, but it's still an interesting, it's an eventful entrance into the building. And the roofing is also eventful. And all these buildings were designed by them. So not just this one. Sorry for the Alami obsession with themselves. There is the Dutch tradition, even in the windows. They do not say no to certain parts of tradition, but they also invent, and they are exuberant. Magnificent view, isn't it? Another work by him, Pete Kramer. This was in that park that I mentioned earlier. The park was created on the initiative of the Amsterdam tile dealer, his name, in the difficult years of the First World War, whom he knew from the Architectura Amicizia anyway. Margaret Kropholler, his later wife, Cornelis. These are the names of the people that this tile dealer invited. Hastie gave them complete freedom in building 17 country houses on a specially purchased plot in Bergen. 7 detached, 2 double and 2 three-part villas. The only condition was that they would make ample use of Hastie's tiles in the interiors. It's fine. All villas were built between 1917 and 1918. And you see, he built Piet Kramer, but these 2 villas were not preserved. And there is a garden house now, the hut, which was, this one was built by him. Yeah, some of them didn't make it. It's medievalist. It has a medieval flavor. Again, the reverence towards the past. Another one by him, very rural and in a way appropriately for a place like a park, gardens and so on. But this is the other side of the Dutch spirit. A very interesting spirit, very generous and very innovative, but also connected with what preceded it, sometimes at least. You can tell it's Holland here, it's the Netherlands, it's the country of Vincent van Gogh, who also had himself some moments of nostalgia, very intense. Another building in Amsterdam, also by him, some details. You see complications which are expressions of that desire that Boullee had and that Louis Kahn mentioned. Look at the art of brick, making brick work. They had craftsmen to build this properly. I mean, it's not just the architect. They had the people who knew how to build this building properly. And this is not a little thing. I don't think we have these craftsmen these days. Yes, we can 3D print, but craftsmen to work with brick in such a complex way, we don't usually have. The later part of his life, he built a lot of bridges. This is a man, if you go to Amsterdam, if the pandemic ends, many of the bridges in Amsterdam were built by Piet Kramer. One of them, maybe more modernistic, because he died in 1961. So he was, almost making it to be our contemporary. But he built several. Some of them are more interesting. He built many bridges. He was the architect of bridges in the later part of his life. Look at this. This is a building, a technical building, but the appearance is a little expressionistic structure, mysterious, like a mask. Very interesting building. This one as well, isn't it? I mean, it's almost like a face, an elongated face, with the eyes and some kind of a nose. It looks at you. The building looks at you. So in essence, you can be creative doing anything. Look at this parapet for this bridge. Here also, the talent of the architect manifested itself, and the flowers can only smile and be happy with what Piet Kramer did. Why did he do this here? Well, here we almost see conceptually that museum by Ingels that he built over a bridge, over a river in Norway. The same twisting in the center. When you cross the bridge exactly at the center, something happens because you cross on the other side. I don't know if Ingels thought of this, but his work made me think of this. We saw this from a different angle. And now Plan West 1923, he did a lot of housing complexes, very ample. It was a little bit difficult to find my way through them, to identify them. Some more complex, others more, but a lot of social housing from Piet Kramer. Even a department store, I don't know if this one still exists. Quite ample, as you can see. So he was an accomplished, very accomplished architect. a department store. And this is the man with a, a little bit funny, rebellious beard, kind of like mine now. That's why I postponed to get a webcam so you won't see my pandemic beard. Look at this! Look at this whimsical window here. Why not? I mean, all of a sudden, this building is unique because of a few details. This rounded corner and this strange window at the top, and other details. I mean, look at this delicious window here. It's art. It's art. This is what it is. It is art. What is this? No, I didn't have pictures. Another apartment building by Kramer is Dutch. This is a restaurant or a patisserie, something for sweets. I would rather have the sweets, but anyway, he did, like any architect, you take any job, you want to build, you want to earn a living, and you also want to earn a life. So you try to do both. Brag means in Dutch, I deducted bridge. So now I'll show more bridges by the architect of Amsterdam bridges. This is one. So Amsterdam is filled with his bridges. Another one, Lichtenbrug. Brugge is a bridge. This is newer somehow, but maybe a little bit less romantic. Another one from 26, 27, and these beautiful Dutch bicycles. It's clear that the future belongs to the bicycle and not to the car. Because one thing is for sure, the bicycle does not pollute the air. And it also keeps you healthy because you move your legs. So there, two great benefits at once. That building also, this building is also by Kramer, another housing complex. We see Boullee there right in the middle above the grass, a little sample of Boullee aspiration towards the absolute. Another bridge, Brugge, another villa. This villa is not perhaps so interesting or so innovative, but architects build. They have to build. They have bills to pay, and sometimes they sell their soul in the process, unfortunately. Anyway, another brook, another bridge. What is this? A monument from 1934, 1935, and the monument it is. It cannot be named in any other way. It is a monument, maybe a little bit too explicitly so. This one we saw already, an indirect, oblique, unintentional homage to Boullee. I'm joking, of course. Another bridge, 307. I don't know if he built hundreds, but he built quite a number of bridges in Amsterdam. This one is more technological, but still. Another brook, another bridge. This one is getting closer to us, 1947, after the war. It accommodates the car, of course. And that's it with Kramer. And now I go to the last part of the presentation, which is with this architect about whom I should know more. In fact, I discovered him just 2 days ago. And he has interesting things, and I will mention them now. Frank van Klingeren. Frank van Klingeren is not very well known, but I will say when we arrive at the specific images why I think he is relevant. So Frank van Klingeren, he was actually born today. So we should wish him happy birthday. Of the three architects I showed today, Boullee, Kramer, and Klingeren, the first two died on February 4th, but Klingeren was born today. So was, unlike Herman Hahn, a real outsider in the Dutch architecture scene of the 60s and the 70s. I love outsiders. Trained as a construction engineer, he was a self-taught architect that kept away from architecture gatherings or cliques. He was more at home among people from avant-garde theater of the period than among forum architects like Van Eyck, Bakema, and Herzberger, although he shared a lot of his ideas with the latter. They even received the Fritz Schumacher Prize in 1974 together, Herzberger for his central office in Apeldoorn, and Van Klingeren for T. Carregat in Eindhoven. You are going to see that building in detail. Both buildings celebrating multifunctionality and an openness towards change. I love both multifunctionality and an openness towards change. And you know, this is what differentiates a country like the Netherlands from other countries. They are open to hybridity, to multifunctionality, and they are open towards change. They welcome change. Although Frank van Klingeren was quite productive as an architect from the late 50s to the mid 70s, his main claim to fame was established with the design of 3 consecutive multicultural community buildings, or agoras, as he called them. De Marpal in Dronten, Agora in Lelystad, and T. Carregat in Eindhoven. But his media presence was broader than that, especially after finishing the Marpal, sorry for the pronunciation. He evolved towards a counterculture, societal critic, and television personality, while keeping his distance from direct involvement in flower power, hippie, or provo movements. He was, in that sense, a provocateur in a business suit. But because we are dealing here with the end of 60s, beginning of the 70s, that's why the reference to the flower power, the hippie movement, and so on. So he was a provocateur, but in a business suit, as this short text describes him. And now we look at a picture with this multifunctional space. You know, 50 years ago it was built approximately, and it had a variety of functions within. You know, here people, you see, they play volleyball. Other people watch from tables, so you can eat, you can play the ball, you can do many things in this structure. It's indeed a multifunctional structure, quite modernistic in its, if not necessarily, I mean, even in its aesthetics is very modernistic. But what I like is this informality that it invites. It's not stiff. Outside, yes, it's a box, but inside it's an architectonic mechanism that welcomes change and ad hoc gatherings and so on. You know, like here, they even have a market, you know, and you know, you see the carriage, a baby carriage, people drinking and eating at the tables and so on. So it's informal, and I think this informality is very at home there somehow. Now another agora, for this one I only found an image, is this one, but the third one I have detailed images of it, and will understand what he stood for. And I think despite the fact that we are confronted with a pandemic and implicitly with social distancing, the idea of hybridity, to bring people together from various walks of life and through various functions, I think it's a good one. While construction work for De Marpal was still going on, Van Klingeren was commissioned to design a similar multifunctional building for Lelystad, the second new town to be built in Flevoland, and planned to become the largest city and capital of the new Polder province. The first design elaborated further on the open concept and mix of functions that we saw previously. In this case, however, the scale was larger, and Van Klingeren managed to lure in the churches, 3 different denominations, into the collective. Although each church would have its own space, it was to be open like an open air theater, and as Van Klingeren argued, since these spaces would only be used on Sundays, they could double as extra theater and meeting spaces for the rest of the week. Meanwhile, it was decided that not Lelystad, but a newer town, Almere, to be built closer to Amsterdam would be more important and bigger. And construction for Lelystad was delayed. This meant that the scale and budget of Van Klingeren's Agora diminished too. Instead, Van Klingeren proposed the opposite, to enlarge the program with shops and housing facilities, hotel, boarding house, but to do this within the limited budget. To do more with less was one of his favorite slogans. I think it's a beautiful slogan. Yes, to do more with less. If we could do that, we could indeed serve what we call sustainability, and we could use the resources in a wiser way. I would say to do more with less, not to do more with more, and certainly not to do less with more. He proposed a U-shaped steel post and beam structure of 3 stories to be left open and to be colonized, so-called colonized over time, by the people and by the entrepreneurs. The ground floor will still be like the one that we saw, but a swimming pool was added. This open ground floor would be connected to the adjoining park, so much so that Van Klingeren started to title the different zones and so on. Theater landscape, youth cave, swimming and undressing landscape, etc. All in an open wall-less setting. You see the wall-less, what does that mean? It's just like in a museum without walls of André Malraux. In essence, art is about breaking down the walls of separation, is about communication. This is in the very definition of the word art, and the oldest that I found. Art equals bridge equals God. It's really about communication, about connecting. While Demarpal could be called urbanism, realized with architectural means, the last design for Lelystad would have been a landscape design instead, growing over time. The proposal proved to be too radical for Lelystad, and the toned down conventional agora was built in the city center by one of Van Klingeren's former employees. But now we arrive at the last work that I show tonight. This remarkable work in the spirit of the other 2 so-called agoras, as he called them, built in Eindhoven. The T. Carregat Center in Eindhoven from 1970 in the Netherlands. Estate centers are now really beginning to appear. With a single flexible structure, they combine all the facilities required by a community, from schools to health centers, libraries, gymnasiums, restaurants, supermarkets, and banks, all within pedestrian distance from homes. This example, which is new even for Holland, belongs to Herzenbrücken estate, recently built to the east of Eindhoven. But the text was written when it was. It has 1,700 apartments for some 7,000 inhabitants, almost all of whom are young couples. This estate center, the T. Carregat Center, occupies a slightly higher and undulating site on the edge of the estate, surrounded by a green belt. It has a ground floor on 3 gently staggered levels and basement floor. The structure is formed by 37 large, square, self-bearing canopies in steel and glass, with shafts spaced at intervals of 14.40 meters. In the daytime, the interior is lit by the sun through the glass roofing, and in the evening by a system fitted into the framework of the canopies themselves, together with a heating system. Ventilation is effected by openings in the pitched roofing, which allows fresh air to enter, and by means of aspirators housed in the top of canopies. This is the last part of the text, so it's a little bit long. Estate dwellers will find everything they need here without having to waste time going for miles in different directions every day. Things like shopping, taking the children to school, or going to the doctor can all be done under the same roof. Parents going shopping can see their children attending lessons, and this makes school more natural and spontaneous. Just as the covered piazza in the middle of the center, used for games, concerts, and meetings, is also natural. Designed at the same time as the estate with a consultancy of sociologists, doctors, and teachers, this center was ready for its users, for the estate inhabitants when they moved in. However, they have taken to it with a natural and enterprising spirit. The center really works. The architecture, which is simply a system of roofing, and O is missing, is at the same time an identifying sign and landmark. And now you'll see some images. Essentially, he created just a frame, in a way, a framework for the activities that were to happen there spontaneously, almost ad hoc. And again, it's that beautiful spirit that exists in the Netherlands and maybe in some other countries too. This truly democratic spirit, where you see, someone is selling clothes here. Some children are running, some girls are taking a walk, and some people are making a transaction at the bank. It's human activities all under the same roof. It's a geometric version of a technological roof, but it's kind of like a flexible heart of a community. And it's an open space, yes, but it's a space that invites people to meet and do their things that they have to do without the struggles that in some other parts are unavoidable. It's this spirit of the 60s and 70s that animates this work. And it's something positive here. Again, I'm very sorry. I mean, my words are not adequate that we have the pandemic. But under normal conditions, this kind of space, and it's unpretentious, really. This is not an expensive structure. Look at children there. They study in open air in this space. Why not? They are part of life. No, you feel connected, and this feeling of feeling connecting, I think, is very, very positive. What an idea now to bring the school or the kindergarten in an open space which has a multitude of functions. And they are not separated. Yes, the section is maybe a little bit strange, but it functions, the building, quite well. If we can call it a building. I mean, it is a building, but it has some quality. It's some kind of a low-key utopianism. It's very realizable, and it was realized. And you don't know exactly what it is here. Is it what kind of a structure is here? It's a school, it's a kindergarten, what is it? You look at these boys returning from there, and architectural is also fresh. I would say, it's a little bit futuristic. It's a techno look, but not in an aggressive way. And I don't know. I think the more, if we could achieve this conjunction, this unity, this connection. I remember that Friedrich Kissler, the visionary architect and designer, he taught at Columbia University. Correalism is about correlation, to correlate, to unite again, to bridge between people and events and functions. And this is not necessarily disorder, even though you see here some random. I understood the structure was refurbished, so this picture is probably taken during that process or before it was refurbished. But even like this, I think is not unpleasant to look at it, because it's about process, the processuality of life. It's about the dynamics of life. It's not static. It's about becoming. And I think he did a good job. This architect I knew nothing about 2 days ago, and I'm happy I know now. And he did a few other works, but I will stop with this this work for now. This is the building after it was refurbished very recently. And again, the roofing system, which is, I think, quite good, aesthetically as well. So the ever experimental Dutch, and I think we can learn a lot from them. You know, it's an open society. It's very capable of surprising itself and us all the time, and that's because they are open. You know, they have even computers there now, of course, and the structure is welcoming our time in as much as it welcomed the 70s. And I think I'm approaching the end of the presentation tonight. Thank you very much.